Hi guys, I'm just going to go through a process that I went through to make some examples for the PowerPoint that you've seen. So just so you can see that demoed in front of you in terms of things that you might want to do. It's this certainly isn't a definitive that you have to copy it kind of way, but just to make you think about how you might want to work with the samples that you've made and any existing work that you've already had. So I've preloaded my file to make life easy for me. I've not named my layers, which is really naughty and really bad practice, and I should have. But what I've got on here, I've got them all switched off at the moment. So I've got an original tree bark rubbing, and then I've got some of the edits that were made last week to that. So working with the Photoshop filters. I've got an original tree bark sketch. And then I've got a couple of filters of those as well. So I've loaded those in so I can use them easily as I wish. And I've also got a pattern which was made from a section of one of the tree bark drawings. So a section of that was selected and then a pattern was made from it. And I've made a pattern there. So I've got these all loaded here so that I can use them as I wish. You don't have to have everything open in one file if you don't want to, but just that you've got access to them so you can integrate things together. Now, I've got a photo that I'd like to work on, a coastal photo. And I've also got an illustration. So you might choose a few different bits of content that you've already made to have a go at adding some texture into them. Okay, so in terms of a process of things that we could do, so I think I'll work on the photograph first, and you'll recognize this photo because there's an example of this one already in the PowerPoint. So I'm going to turn on a couple of layers, and obviously I can't see that one because it's behind that one. And actually, I'd like to see my texture as I'm working on it. So I'm going to put my texture above my photo in my list of layers so that I can see what I'm doing. Now, I've got a sketch already of where I might place this texture. So let's assume that I'm working from my sketch, and I've already sketched out that I'd like to put some texture here where the water is. I'd like to make that more textural. I can see that there is some there already. Okay, so if I were going to do that, I might want to fill it completely with just one bit of texture sample that I've already made. So for example, I'm going to Control T so that I can transform this and make it a bit bigger so it sits over the top of my my whole C area that I want to fill. Then I'm going to turn the viewer back off so that I can see what I'm doing, and I'm going to use my lasso tools to select over the space that actually I want the texture to sit within. So I'm using my photo to make a selection. I've actually got a feather on here. I don't know if you can see that the edges of my selection, rather than being hard edges, they're actually softer edges, and that's because I had a feather on the last time I was using it. I'll show you what that does because it's actually quite handy. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flick that layer back on. This is the texture layer, so you can see that my selection is made over the top of the texture layer, and actually that's the bit that I want to make the selection from. So I'm going to make sure that that one is highlighted. I'm going to select the inverse. I could do this a couple of ways. I could select the inverse and delete, which is what I was going to do. So I'll show you that. Inverse, delete on my keyboard, I'm left with some texture. I'll just step back, Control Z, and I'll show you if I didn't select the inverse. Actually, I'll step back twice so we get back to where we were. So I've got the selection that I made originally. I could copy and paste, Control C, Control V. Oh, that's not what I was expecting. I could copy and paste. That's what I was expecting. And then I've still got the same outcome. I think copying and pasting is probably a better idea because then I've still got my original here that hasn't been edited. So I can use it again in another way if I choose. So what I've got now are two layers that I can see. I've got a layer of texture and a layer of original photograph. I might want to do things like see how transparent or opaque it is. So I can change the opacity and make it lighter or darker like this and make no further changes to it. I can obviously use my layer styles, and I'll just flick down the menu there and see if there's anything I like the look of that feels a bit like what I was hoping. So maybe I would like that, and I could say, oh, that's a nice texture example. Okay, now we can do lots of different versions of this. So you can have this on layers in your file, or you can do it in different files and save them. It's entirely up to you. So the same process we'll have a go at doing with maybe some other examples. So I'm going to pull the textural sample over the top of the work that I want to edit, so that I've then got, I can see what's going on basically. So I'm going to Control T on my sample so I can turn it around so it's the right way, so it fills the space. And actually what I'd like to do is I would like to fill these sort of dark blue purpley areas. So what I'd like to fill them with is some selections of white. So what I might do is just make this big enough that it can sit kind of over the top. I might actually end up turning that around again. I've got Control T selected here so that it's going to be where I want it to be. I'm going to place that one, and then I'm going to duplicate that layer, and I'm going to put another over here in the shadow of this sort of like mountainous bit. Okay, so now I've got some texture where I'm going to want my texture ready to be selected. So I'm going to work on this layer so that I can select the areas that I want. This time I'm going to use my magic wand tool. I'm going to select that sort of purpley grey blue colour, and I'm going to get Photoshop to select all that's similar, so all the same colour in that document. That's a handy way of selecting that quickly. Then I'm going to go onto this layer, and I'm going to copy and paste, Control C, Control V, and I'm going to do the same on this layer while I've still got that selection made. Which, have I still got the selection made? There's so much going on now I can't tell. I'm going to make that selection again. I'll just select similar so that I get anything that's the same. So on this layer, this side of the document, I am going to copy, paste. Right, if I turn off the viewer on the original, I can pull this over and it's going to be just in the right place that I can lay it over the top of those areas that were selected. And then if I turn this one on, I can pull this one over in the right place. Now I might just quite like it like that actually, and just leave it as is. That's an example. And then obviously we can do the playing around of the layer styles and see how we want those to interact, etc. So I might actually leave mine at normal because I quite liked it at normal, but you can play around with that.